Oh, yeah.
Oh, should both these be pointed toward me?
Just one. Okay, good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Uh, this is called Poetry is Anarchy, and we're here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And basically, my friend Eric. Now, how do you pronounce your last name again, Eric?
I read under the name Desambois.
Deslambla. Okay, Eric Deslambla. And he's a man that I've heard read numerous times at Poets Monday. And he's one of the men that I really liked his poetry when I first heard him. And now that we've got to know each other as human beings, I really like him as a human being. And I always believe, like, if the show's been successful, if I've learned something. So, and I've never not learned anything from your poetry, Eric. So, what I thought we'd do is start out with Eric reading one of his poems, and then we'll discuss it. And then he'll read it again, and we'll discuss it some more. Then I'll read one of my poems, and we'll discuss it, and same deal. And ladies and gentlemen, just remember, it takes more than one monkey to run this show. So, my friend Eric, we'll begin. Which poem are we going to begin with?
Oh, why don't I read? I'll read the earlier one, and it's Declaration of Interdependence.
Okay.
I was taught to say the Pledge of Allegiance before I knew what the words meant, like signing a contract when you didn't see the fine print. Say, that kid's wearing an American flag, but he's flying the colors just a little bit bent, stripes askew and stars below all bunched together like pocket lint. He's rewriting the Constitution, adding himself and you and me. He's filling empty declarations of destiny with more colors than red and white and blue, yellows and browns and tans and every hue. He's replanting chopped down cherry trees and speaking for those slaves Ulysses S. Grant's wife owned, William Jones and Black Julia, because now they're dead and can't. I thought I knew a song of freedom, so I sang it loudly, hand to breast and hard upon my sleeve, but it wasn't worth the paper upon which it was written, composing concepts of emancipation for the few. I am unlearning, uninternalizing, unassimilating. I will abide in this house no longer, this house of pain. When I was a child, I was taught to cry for Jesus, his compassionate blue eyes beaming with benevolence from beneath a crown of thorns and hair, dishwater blonde, his alabaster skin, Middle Eastern countenance, never shifting from anything but pleasant, my Nordic-featured savior from the north of Africa. Heaven sent, he's teaching Sunday school stories about John Wayne and Christopher Columbus and that white guy who played the Indian on Daniel Boone. But Charlton Heston ain't my messiah, and they can have the soul of my nation when they pry it from my cold, dead fingers.
It's so good. I love it. I love it.
Thank
you. From my cold, dead fingers.
Yeah, that's what Charlton Heston said when he was head of the NRA. Yeah.
I know, and I love that.
They can have my gun when they pry it from my cold, dead fingers.
Yeah, and it's and I love this part too because everybody knows that Jesus was a Jew, and he certainly wasn't a blind Nordic. And this is perfect, your alabaster skin, Middle Eastern countenance. I mean, what an obscenity, you know? I mean, an albino Jesus in the Middle East? Come on now. And I always thought that was so weird, you know?
You know when I noticed that, though?
What?
I mean, because I grew up around, well, I mean, even after I was a little older and I knew all these militant people who, you know, were always like talking about why, you know, how come, like in the movies especially, Jesus, or in the pictures, Jesus looked the way that he was looked and why he was depicted that way. But I was an election monitor in El Salvador, and I was a monitor in their first election right after their revolution. So, you know, I was meeting like guys who overthrew their government and forced the government to have democratic elections. But a very Catholic country, and Salvadorans tend to be like short, brown people, dark eyes, dark hair, and we're in this van, and we pull up behind this city bus, and it's this big image of Jesus on the back of the bus, and he looks like he came from Sweden, and it's particularly noticeable because in this country there are plenty of white people around who look like that, and it just, it doesn't. I mean, I just didn't think about it in the context that I grew up in. I grew up in Arkansas in the Southern Baptist Church, and it was that Aryan Jesus that we used to pray to. But in El Salvador, with all these brown people in their country, with this really pale Jesus, he just stood out like a sore thumb.
Exactly.
And that's who I was thinking of when I was describing this. I wasn't even thinking of the one that I grew up with.
Rabbi?
I was thinking of the one. I was thinking of the one who was on the back of this bus, because he was just so. I mean, he couldn't. I don't think he would be able to live in El Salvador. He would.
Excuse me,
He would
Rabbi.
be
Can you give me a
sunburned.
pencil, please? Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying that this Jesus, he. I
Okay,
mean, he
that's
wouldn't
good.
be able to. He wouldn't be able to survive in El Salvador. He would just be burned to a crisp with his fair skin. But there he was, staring out back at me on the back of this bus, and that's who I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I didn't know that about your experience there, but I always thought, you know, uh, the Jesus that I got pictured was the same. Thank you very much, Rabbi. Your champ. Um, anyhow, yeah, I always thought that too, because how can there be a Jesus that gets these thousands and thousands of people that he looks like Casper the Friendly Ghost, and going to hold all these people, spellbound, you know, and then as a black man, Eric, I mean, how could you relate to that kind of guy? I mean, I couldn't relate to him, at all.
Well, I think you don't think about it. That's how you relate. And I mean, obviously, to my mind, it's a tool, to say, Jesus looks like this person, God looks like this person, and we're taking over your country, and we look like God, so you should
Yeah.
obey us. But I know a good friend of mine. He retired from UWM last year. His name is Patrick Belgard Smith, and he's originally from Haiti.
Okay.
And he was teaching in the Africology department at UW Milwaukee. And he said that one of his classes is African religious thought. And he told me that a number of times black students would come to him and be really disturbed when he would tell them that, Jesus shouldn't be black, or he would tell them that, his God was black, and they would have a real problem with that. And black students had told him, well, my God is white and he's a man, and would be really angry that, he would be saying these subversive things, which really aren't subversive at all. It's saying God looks like me. It's saying I'm made in the image of God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only thing that makes sense to me in this Judeo-Christian ideas is that the kingdom of God is within us,
Exactly. Oh
and
yeah.
I can believe that when I can look in people's eyes and I can see the kingdom of God, whatever the kingdom of God is, in human beings. So I really like that.
Well, remember what Jesus said. Jesus said, "All the things that I have done, even the least of you could do, and more."
Yeah.
And we lose sight of that. The only churches that teach things like that are churches of wealthy people who want to teach their kids that you can take possession of the world. It's supposed to be yours, and it's not in a really good way, not in a sharing way, usually.
Not yeah. That's the kind of Jesus that I never bought into. The kind of Jesus that I mean, if there is a Jesus, I mean, there was a Jesus of some kind, if that's
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
God, but it makes perfect sense that the power within us, you know, and the power within us is so amazing.
Sure, sure.
You know, I mean, you and I meeting with each other on the way to school on that bus, you know, and connecting because of Poets Monday, you know, just the simpatico,
Yeah.
just naturally, you know. But that was on. But that came after I heard your poetry, and
Mm.
heard how you thought and felt.
Yeah.
So I had a leg up there, and and then you think about Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted. I was going to say whatever you talked about. I was going to bring that up next.
Okay, good. Go on. What were you going to say? Because this is really interesting to me.
Well, the way I originally wrote the line, or this verse, it simply said, "Those slaves Ulysses S. Grant owned," and a couple of times people came up to me and said, "Well, Grant never owned slaves," and they would say, "Yeah, I think you're wrong on that." So I went and looked it up, and he owned William Jones and Black Julia. Um, William Jones was a man that his father-in-law gave to Grant and his wife as a wedding present, and Black Julia was um, um, Julia, Ulysses S. Grant's wife, was her mammy, and then took care of Grant's children growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But Grant owned both of them, and it's interesting because if you look it up um, on the internet, if you Google it, uh, there are a number of websites that address the issue, and they sort of debate back and forth. Well, he didn't really own William Jones; he was loaned to him, or Grant let him work freely, and Grant was a really nice, owner.
Nice
Or
slave owner,
yeah,
yeah.
he was really not, and maybe he was, and I think that's fine. But the thing is, throughout none of those debates, they're always from Grant's perspective. None of them are saying, "Well, I wonder what William Jones thought. I wonder what Black Julia thought." So Grant has enough people defending him and detracting toward him, and I don't really care how Grant felt about who William Jones and Black Julia were. I'm much more interested in their side of the story. And did William Jones think
Mm-hmm.
Grant was his slave master? And I'm much more interested in their side of the story because enough people have Grant's back in this issue, and
Exactly.
nobody has William Jones and Black Julia's back.
Yeah, and Black Julia to me is has a beautiful image from what you just told me about being the nanny for his sister, wife, or whatever, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But the line that knocks me out here is right here where you said, because now they're dead and can't.
yeah, yeah.
And
That's what I was
just
trying
your
to say.
writing, just your
Yeah.
writing, is just so plain and straightforward. Because now they're dead and can't. Bam, and that solves the whole problem.
Yeah,
You know, because it doesn't really matter
right.
unless you start thinking. You know, and so many what were they called, wet nurses or whatever that
They were
would.
just called mammies.
Yeah, but
Oh, I know what you mean,
later
a wet
on,
nurse.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that was just so common though. I
yeah,
mean, even in the centuries, I mean,
yeah.
the wet nurse thing.
What I think is funny is because my godmothers who raised me, they were maids,
Okay.
and they were housekeepers, just like well, not like in that movie The Help, but they were doing the job that they were showing in that movie The Help. So I actually saw what that was like, and what happened in that. And so now what you hear is that black women can't raise their own children, and I think a lot of people would like to take it back to a time when black women are raising wealthy white people's children. We can't raise our own children, but we can. We were entrusted with raising their children.
Yeah, it's so interesting you're saying this, Eric, because a lot of my life I was a social worker, and but then I was a therapist and stuff, and we get these young white girls from some university, 23, 24-year-old young woman, whose idea of a hard time is having a hangtail nail, and maybe a pimple, you know, and telling these women that are 21, 19, whatever, having 3 children, how to raise their damn children. And they have no idea what it's like to struggle with $225 worth of food stamps to feed 3 children and all this, you know? They
Yeah.
have no idea what's going on. I mean, they're oblivious to it. And then I see you as a young man, but I thought I knew a song of freedom, and I sang it so loudly, hand to my breast, and then you add this heart on my sleeve.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful, yeah. And we all wear a heart on our sleeve, and a young man singing this out loud, you know, with the heart on the sleeve. So what were you trying to get at more than that?
No, I mean that's literally who I was.
Okay.
Probably the first 17 years of my life. I moved here when I was 17. I graduated from high school when I was 17, and it was on a Sunday, and I moved here the following Friday. And I like to think that I continued to progress and change. And you know, we've talked about change, and you and I we've talked about redemption. And I've said that I think redemption is more important than purity. And part of what redemption means is that you're one thing and then you become another thing. You change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think human beings, if you're not changing, if you're the same as you were today, yesterday, and tomorrow, well, that is how we're different from the divine. We're aspects of the divine. And if you're not changing and growing, then you're dead.
Exactly. Dylan said the same damn thing. He who is not busy being born is busy dying.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and
Yeah.
that's exactly right. But I get this picture of this young black kid with all his heart singing loud and the heart on the sleeve, and we're all like that, you know. At one time we were innocent and we did believe this,
Yeah.
and we did believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah, and that's fine.
I think it's
for that
great.
time,
Uh-huh.
you know. But to every time, I feel like I keep bringing up the Bible. But I
Yeah.
mean, I was raised steeped in the Southern Baptist religion, and I wouldn't say that I'm a Southern Baptist now. I mean, I've been a Buddhist. I mean, I hold the Bible as a divine book, but I, you know, I think that it has a truth, and I don't take the truth literally of it. I think it's a bunch of beautiful parables that teach the truth.
Hmm. Yeah, and because whoever wrote the Bible, who's ever doing these parables, you know, they're so powerful. You know, so powerful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and you know, and you know, you want to hear a joke?
sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is so yeah, Jesus comes back, you know, right? And he and St. Peter are hanging out, you know. And anyhow, so St. Peter says, you know, hey, you know, now let's go walk on water. And Jesus goes, hey, that's old hat for me. I'm not a one-trick pony, you know. I've already done that. St. Peter says, come on, let's do that. Let's do that. So they go out the edge of the pier, jump off, and Peter just strolls on the water, right? He strolls. He's just strolling. He's cool, you know. And Jesus jumps in and sinks to the bottom. Sinks to the bottom, right? And so he comes back up and he's wiping the water off him. And St. Peter says, "Not so easy with them holes in your feet, is it?"
I told a joke similar to that to my girlfriend, and
Yeah.
you know, I mean, she was raised Catholic,
Uh-huh.
and but I mean, I thought I had a pretty good idea of, you know, where she was with, you know, religion and whatnot. But she looked a little concerned, and she told me, "You can never tell that joke to my mother." And I told her, I could never tell that joke to my mother.
Yep. And that's true. But then now then the other thing. Read it again. But I got some other things I want to say about this because there's some really cool things in here. Read it again if you would, Eric.
Oh, sure. I was taught to say the Pledge of Allegiance before I knew what the words meant, like signing a contract when you didn't see the fine print. Say, that kid's wearing an American flag, but he's flying the colors just a little bit bent, stripes askew and stars below all bunched together like pocket lint. He's rewriting the Constitution, adding himself and you and me. He's filling empty declarations of destiny with more colors than red and white and blue, yellows and browns and tans and every hue. He's replanting chopped down cherry trees and speaking for those slaves Ulysses S. Grant's wife owned, William Jones and Black Julia, because now they're dead and can't. I thought I knew a song of freedom, so I sang it loudly, hand to breast and hard upon my sleeve, but it wasn't worth the paper upon which it was written, composing concepts of emancipation for the few. I am unlearning, uninternalizing, unassimilating. I will abide in this house no longer, this house of pain. When I was a child, I was taught to cry for Jesus, his compassionate blue eyes beaming with benevolence from beneath a crown of thorns and hair dishwater blonde. His alabaster skin, Middle Eastern countenance, never shifting from anything but pleasant, my Nordic-featured savior from the north of Africa. Heaven sent, he's teaching Sunday school stories about John Wayne and Christopher Columbus and that white guy who played the Indian on Daniel Boone, but Charlton Heston ain't my messiah, and they can have the soul of my nation when they pry it from my cold, dead fingers.
And that is just so good, Eric. It's, because you flip the script here now, and I see Charlton Heston. And Charlton Heston's such a powerful man.
Oh, yeah. He had a great voice.
And he was a powerful character. And then you do this caricature of him. Michael Moore did the caricature of him in the whatever Michael Moore type show about guns or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, and I really liked it. And a lot of people didn't, but I liked it for a different reason. But go on if you want to.
Well, no, that Charlton Heston, I thought it was just such an obscene, sad thing. Because this man, who was a virile, strong man, and now you're seeing him like Citizen Kane, just frazzled up,
Yeah.
and so weak and so sad,
Yeah.
and holding on to one thing he can believe in, which is a fucking gun. Think about that.
About that, I don't want to get off the subject. We've talked about the fact that I can get off the subject, way off the subject. But Charlton Heston, I didn't know that he was in that bad a shape until that movie. And if you look at him, and as he's talking to Michael Moore, I didn't realize it until he's walking away, and you see him walking away, and he walks, and he closes the door, and I realized, oh man, he's. I didn't realize he was that old, and I realized that he was kind of ill, and I didn't realize that until I saw him, and and I was still concerned for him. But the thing that I liked the most about that, a lot of people feel like Michael Moore blindsided him with that and with the questions that he was asking, but I didn't feel that way at all, because the answers that he was giving, those are the answers I would have given. Mm-hmm. And Michael Moore is just tearing down these sort of myths, but they're the same myths that I believed in, and was taught. And I didn't think that he was blindsided, because I thought Michael Moore was asking questions. And again, the answers that Charlton Heston was giving, those are the answers that I would have given about why this country is so violent. And I thought it was important.
Mm-hmm. I looked at it like Michael Moore was being a bully.
Right.
And Charlton Heston, 20 years ago could have kicked his ass in the next
I
week,
believe so. Until he got up and walked away, I thought he might get up and kick his ass.
Yes, but one of the beautiful things you've done in this poem here is you got your alliteration. His compassionate blue eyes beaming with benevolence, and beneath the crown of thorns, and his hair dishwater blonde, alabaster skin, Middle Eastern countenance. But you got all this alliteration in here that just is, I see those blue eyes gleaming benevolence, and that's so anti my idea of any kind of Jesus Christ type character, would you hang out in the desert with 5,000 other people, no food, no water, no nothing, for some musty looking blonde, blue-eyed Jesus? No, so yeah.
I wouldn't, but I'm not of European descent. maybe if I were a white person from Sweden, I would think that he was, he would be like what is it? I watch a lot of movies, and I grew up watching movies,
Mm-hmm.
and the actor I remember playing Jesus was John Philip Law, and he was exactly like that. He was this tall, tall, square jawed, but like a very gentle face, and
Mm-hmm.
blonde hair, and just very much that, and that's even the way the angels would be portrayed to us. But it was the idea that the idea was that this is not a part of you. You're outside this, and you need to revere this, but you can't be a part of it. You can't have a God who looks like you, and I think that I
So,
think it's
as a growing up as a young man, how did you assimilate this into your Christ-like life? Or did you did you aspire for a Christ-like life as a youngster?
sure,
Okay.
sure, and I think so. I think on some level, I grew up feeling that I was somehow lacking,
Mm-hmm.
but honestly, with this poem, it's titled Declaration of Interdependence. And I was trying to say that we're all dependent upon each other. And honestly, I've made peace with the founding fathers, I've made peace with American history. The only time it comes up is when I'm talking with other people and they're saying these things, and and they're talking to me, and so as part of the dialogue I'll tell them, no, I don't think that quite. There's a book, it's called A Wind Done Gone. This
Okay.
woman wrote it. It's sort of a sequel to Gone with the Wind, but from a black perspective. And of course, Margaret Mitchell's estate promptly sued her, and she had to change names of characters. And
Oh yeah.
but you could tell this one character is Rhett Butler, and you could tell who some of the characters are if you know the story. Well, I tried to read Gone with the Wind, and I didn't finish the first chapter because it was just so offensive to me, and it pissed me off.
What was especially offensive to you?
It starts out, there's a scene where a mammy, a black woman who has two white kids with her, is looking at a handbill on the wall for a slave auction, and it describes her as being very stupid and looking at the handbill for the slave auction and having no idea what it meant because she's not intelligent enough to know what this means. And I felt this was Margaret Mitchell describing her, and Margaret Mitchell, who grew up like lived, like you know, 100 years after slavery. Um, Even if she lived in that time, wouldn't really know if this person were smart or not. Because if you were a slave, you knew better than to let people know that you could read. You tried to play dumb because if you
Mm-hmm.
were smart, you could, you and your kids could pay the price for your being smart. And I just thought the way that she's describing her, she's sort of in this character's head. I can't suspend disbelief enough to believe that she would know that character that well. But when I read A Wind Done Gone, I felt like it sort of healed that rift for me. I could sort of accept Gone with the Wind because this was the other side of the story. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as the other side of the story is being told, Margaret Mitchell can have her side of the story as long
Mm-hmm.
as there's some balance. But
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of what I'm offering. I feel like this is the history lesson I wish that I'd gotten in um, high school and junior high school when they were reading when I was reading the history books that were telling me that George Washington never told a lie, that Grant, the Union was the good guys, and the Confederates were the bad guys, and the Union, everybody who fought in the Union wanted to end slavery, and it was a war to end slavery, and it was just a lot more complicated than that.
Exactly. And then you take these two characters who are the antithesis of what they appear. John Wayne,
Yeah,
John Wayne he drank himself into stupor every night,
yeah, yeah.
and
He hated horses too.
Did he? I didn't know
He
that. I
hated
can believe it.
horses.
I can believe that, though, you know? And Christopher Columbus was such a wuss. I mean, Jesus Christ, and kept begging and stuff, you know? And then you end this thing, the second to last lines right here, with that white guy who played the Indian on Daniel Boone. And, uh, and we all picture that. Now, I can't remember who the hell it was, but I remember Fess Parker, you
Yeah,
know?
it was Ed Ames.
Ed Ames, yeah,
Yeah,
Ed
he and his
Ames.
brother were singers.
Yeah, because he was a good singer. You're exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Now that, yeah, good. So,
Yeah, I grew up watching that. All those Lone Ranger, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett.
uh huh. Yep. And
TV did partially raise me.
everybody, and it's interesting. Ed Ames was really a classy looking man too.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and it was, and Fess Parker was cool, but Ed Ames was amazing.
yeah.
And yeah, and it's interesting that I forgot his name because I was always impressed with that because I was brought up on the same kind of shows, you know. So yeah, this is really cool. What parts of this did I not get that you really uh, think need to be said?
Um, well, I don't know. I think you hit all the points that that are really important to me. Except I begin by talking about the Pledge of Allegiance, and you're taking this pledge, this oath, and they're not. And I felt like nobody was really telling me what were the ramifications of this,
Uh huh.
and what I was pledging allegiance to. And as an adult, I'm willing to do that, but as a child, I don't think I was really prepared yet. I mean,
Uh,
maybe you should never have to say the Pledge of Allegiance until you're 21. You know, it's like a strong drink. But I was at I did a lot of
wow,
the
that's really play with that more, Eric. It's like a strong drink.
yeah. I mean, you're pledging allegiance. You're giving a blood oath.
Uh huh.
It's like you're about to testify on the witness stand. They don't let I mean, it's important.
Hmm.
I guess that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of it. In fact, I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying
No.
that it's really important. I mean, they don't let minors vote. They don't let,
Hmm.
they don't let kids go to liquor stores, but they let you pledge allegiance to a country that you may want to, when you're a little older, you may want to take that, you may want to take that promise back
Exactly.
because a lot of people have,
And
and
see, and see the Pledge of Allegiance thing to me, I took it more to like this marriage. You know,
yeah,
we
yeah,
betrothed each other. You know,
yeah,
and how many people marriages last? You know,
yeah,
and the United States that I pledged to at 6 years old
right.
is a whole lot different than the
Oh
United
yeah,
States that I pledged to now. You know, if I pledged to,
yeah.
and yeah, I think that's so. I think that's so important. And I'm, and but the best part, that heart on my sleeve, I think, as human beings, we all wear, and the poets especially, we by definition wear our hearts on our sleeves,
Yeah.
you know, and I wouldn't live my life any other way,
Yeah, I was gonna add that part. Yeah,
you know,
I mean you should.
you
You
know.
should also get your heart broken, at
Oh,
least once.
oh Jesus! I tell you what, I think that's one universal thing that we all have. We've all had a heart broken, and I think that is just uh, the one thing that ties us together, you know. And Eric having his heart broken is the same as Jeb having his heart broken, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same thing, and uh, it's the same damn thing, man.
I like that because I, I know the thing that I usually cling to, being all morbid and that kind of stuff is that the one thing that unites us is death. But I think it's a better thing to think that that you can have your heart broken unites us even more than death.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because that death is we can choose not to have a heart broken, you know?
Yeah.
We can choose to live
Yeah.
as a snail in a shell, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't choose death or not death, you
Yeah.
know? But that means that we have this universal striving, and that's why redemption is something you and I connect
Yeah.
with. It's
Yeah.
because we all have things we need redemption for,
Yeah.
on a regular basis for me, you know.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
I have no doubt that a lot of my life is I'm paying my karmic debt, Eric. You
Yeah.
know, because I've done some scandalous stuff,
Yeah.
and I think all of us have.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, but the and as far as your writing goes, it's unlearning, uninternalizing, unassimilating, and I will abide in this house no longer. That's so religious. You
Yeah.
know, I love that,
Oh,
man.
thank you.
Yeah, and it's one of the Jewish traditions is you rip your cloak
Right.
when you disown your child. I mean that's a major damn thing, and to uninternalize him, you know, uh, and we can,
Right.
redemption can happen,
Yeah.
and you know, we can be brought up to be totally racist
Yeah.
and just pounded into us. But there's redemption that comes.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a lot of convicts in my life, been around a lot, and
Yeah.
I've seen redemption
Yeah.
from because people had to join the Aryan Brotherhood in order to
Right.
survive in the penitentiary.
Right.
But I've
For
seen the
sure.
redemption come down when people live in the world, you know.
Yeah. I was telling you, this is interesting. I was telling you about my cousin Javon. He's in prison right now in Illinois. I'm not sure exactly where, but
Mm-hmm.
because I was talking about getting in touch with him. And I asked him about the Aryan Brotherhood, and he said he never had a problem with the guys in the Aryan Brotherhood. He liked them fine, and they got along with them, which nobody had ever told me before. But he was one of those interesting people. He would talk about his experiences in prison, and I would think, wow, I mean, because he seemed to have gained a lot out of it, and he seemed to be. It seemed like while in prison, he was doing more with his life than outside of prison. And I'm not going to say that that's true of everybody, but
No,
he's
that's
one of
so
the few.
rare.
Yeah, he was one of the few people I would listen to his story, and he just seemed really lucid and rather profound.
Mm-hmm. Because like when I was 16 or 17, that's when Malcolm X came out with his autobiography, and I think that's one of the most powerful books ever written. And talk about redemption, you know, and uh, and one of the saddest stories about Malcolm X, he's in Detroit, and he's got super great grades. He's really good, and he goes to his guidance counselor. He says, "I want to be an attorney," and they put him into tech school.
Yeah,
And then he gets back and he scares the hell out of these white people because he starts pimping, You know, and that just scares all the white people to death. So. But Malcolm X, that's one of the most beautiful pictures of redemption I've ever seen. You know,
yeah,
and that was from reading that book as a 16-year-old white kid.
yeah,
Saying, "Wow, I can. That's power. This is
yeah,
power." Okay, well, I'm going to read my poem,
yeah, yeah.
and you're going to have a hard time reading it because I'm such a bad writer. But this is called "Just Another Bump." Just another bump. In Milwaukee, it is 27th Street, north or south 8 miles. 3 or 4 blocks on either side, black girls without asses, white girls with her baby's daddy's name or names scrolled on the neck 3 or 4 babies ago. Sad, crying breasts, stained tank tops, 7 a.m. Needing another bump. Just one more $10. And the saddest thing, I can't scrape up a dime. And I want to bump just as bad. Yeah.
I used to live on when I first moved to Milwaukee. I lived on 32nd and North Avenue, and I remember there were young women who were working the street, they kind of disappeared around the time that I just didn't see many after 86 or 87. I don't really know what happened. I think a lot of that changed with like women actually working the corner. I mean, that
Hmm.
I saw. But yeah, I remember one time I was I was leaving the house to go to the store, and I ran into this woman though, and she had kind of gray green eyes. She was very beautiful, and I was just floored by how beautiful she was. And I said hi to her, and that was kind of it. That was all that ever happened. But was this based on something that really happened? I mean, it sounds like a slice of life.
Oh yeah, it is very much so. And see, my experience is today, if we go on 27th Street, we're
Yeah,
gonna find that same damn thing, you know.
yeah,
And and they flare off. Like for
right,
example,
right.
27th Street in Atkinson, where I used to work at the methadone clinic there,
Yeah,
you know, and uh, and that was of course a real hot spot at that
yeah,
time because you know people would give you oral sex for $5, you know, and that's how desperate people were. And it's 7 a.m. And you know they're just looking for another bump, another rock, you know, and uh, and that kind of dire straits and that kind of
right,
sadness.
right.
And one of my favorite lines here is, "And black girls without asses." You know, that's such a sad thing. You know, after they start smoking crack, like in a year, they're gonna lose their ass. You know, and I'm talking about literally and figuratively. You know, it's one of the saddest things. You know, and then you see these white girls with their tattoo scrolls. You know, on their necks. I mean, I mean, at 16 or 17, they're setting their life course, you
Yeah,
know? And it's just, you know, but fortunately, there is redemption, and I've seen redemption time and time again, you know? And one of the interesting things, I've worked with a lot of, my job's always, I've been a therapist most of my life.
hmm,
And one of the big differences in black women and white women when they get clean and sober, when a black woman gets clean and sober, the first thing you see are the children. And they're dressing well, they're clean, they're dressing really well. When a white woman gets sober and clean, the first thing you see is herself looking good, dressing clean, looking good, and then the children. But usually, the black women, the children come first, and the white women, the women come first. Yeah, and I don't know why that is, but it's been this way for a long, long time. It's a really interesting thing, though. Yeah.
my uh, my family history with uncles and other family members. There's a long history of drug problems, and
Hmm.
so I've actually seen that you know, in people close to me, and that's my main connection to it. And I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know a lot about it because my a lot of my family members would try and keep that kind of thing from me. But as I got older, I found out, like, well, this person acted this way because she drank a lot, and or she acted this way because she had a pretty serious drug problem, and um,
Hmm.
and it's why, um, but it's also why family to me are my friends,
Hmm.
and but like blood relatives, I have my brother, and we grew up together. I have my mother, and I have my uncle who's in Los Angeles now,
Hmm.
and other family members. Um, it's sort of like we were the family members that people didn't want to know how bad they were doing unless they were doing really bad, And when we found out, if we found out, we knew that people were really pretty desperate. They were pretty desperate.
So are you kind of the goody two shoes of your family? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's how
They
they.
viewed you.
I think that's how they viewed us,
Yeah.
and but I mean that's been a recurring theme to me because I'm a Southerner, but I don't really sound like a Southerner. I'm black, but a lot of people have that term. You don't really sound black. Um, it's interesting when white people tell me that, or like I remember I worked at Potawatomi, and white
Okay.
guy, this white guy told me that he was blacker than me. Because he dated a black woman, and he said nigger, so he was blacker than me. Oh, and he listened to hip hop, and it was interesting because when I first saw him, I thought he looked like a Georgia prison guard. He was a big guy.
Wow.
He was a. I mean, I wasn't trying to, I wasn't trying to make fun of him, but he was a big white guy with a shaved head. He
Yeah.
looked like a big Georgia prison guard, and he told me that. But one day he told me that he was blacker than me, and that's the kind of thing. You don't respond. I mean, that's not the kind of thing I would respond to. It's not the kind of argument that I would have with him, or the kind of conversation that I would have with him, because I really didn't respect him enough. I mean, and I liked him, but I didn't respect him enough to, you know, have that kind of argument with him.
That's such an interesting thing. I love that image because when you said a Georgia prison guard, I saw it as clear as a bell. You
Oh, yeah.
know?
Well, the thing is, when I first started working at Potawatomi, I was a slot attendant back in '99.
What is a slot attendant?
Oh, that's the person who, when people win a jackpot, or when a machine needs to get refilled, and I don't think they have them now. I think they've kind of phased them out. But we would pay off jackpots. We filled machines. When a machine got a jam, we would unjam the machine. And we dealt a lot with, the people on the floor, which was terrible for me because to me it was loud, and there were all those flashing lights, and I have epilepsy, and I just figured one day I was going to be looking at these lights, and I was just going to have a seizure
Bam,
on the floor.
yeah.
Yeah. But that never happened. But my first day there, they let you shadow somebody. You follow this slot attendant around, and they told me they were going to let me shadow this guy, but he wasn't there because he was on vacation with his black girlfriend, and he was but he had left his ID in the office, and they said, "Yeah, that's him." And I looked at the ID, and I'm like, "Oh crap!" And I thought he was a skinhead, but the first thing I thought was Georgia prison guard. That was the first image that came. That was the first image that came to mind looking at him. But he was nothing like that, and he listened to all this hip hop music, and he considered himself, at the time he considered himself black. I think he broke up with the black woman, and he started dating this white woman. Then I think he just became a regular white person again. Yeah.
That's funny. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because, see, I live in, my neighborhood, I live in black neighborhoods most generally, and I do now, and so most generally I date black women, and because they're people
Right,
you
right.
date people in proximity to you,
Right.
and, but this cracker saying that just knocks me out,
Well, yeah, but you've never told me you were more black than me. I mean, I wasn't trying to compare you to him.
Oh, no. No.
Well, the thing is, he was really just young. He was like he was like 20. I think he was 22 or 23 years old.
Jesus.
And at those ages,
Oh, yeah.
everybody has this idea about who they are, and it's really more about convincing. It's really more about convincing yourself and convincing other people than an idea than an identity that you actually have. And as you get older, you develop. Your identity develops. But a lot of it is about like you're putting labels on other people. You're putting a label on yourself. But it's pretty. It's pretty transitional.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You get older and you learn who you are.
Yep. Or you don't.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, a
you
lot of
don't.
people don't. That
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people
Yeah.
never learn who they are.
And it fascinates me, and we got to leave quick after this. I don't have time to read this because Julie's going to be up next, and she's really good.
Oh, that's too bad. I was afraid
Yeah.
we wouldn't have anything to say.
Oh, shit. No way. Not with us. But it's interesting, that uh, yeah, we really didn't talk a lot of. I think we cut through a lot of the. A lot of times people use words as sunscreens and screens and things to block you away,
Yeah, yeah,
And I feel like today, you know, our words connected us even better. I mean, I always liked you, you know that. I mean, I
yeah,
liked you from very
yeah,
beginning, from
yeah,
jump, and and that whole forgiving attitude that you
yeah,
have
yeah,
is, you
yeah,
know, yeah, yeah, and that's what it's all about. But the big thing I'm hearing in both of our poems is the evolving.
yeah,
It's human beings evolving,
yeah.
and that is the most important thing that we can do is continually to evolve. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't think we have time to read my second, the rest of this, and this is how it always goes. We usually, if we get, if we get one poem read each, that's how it should
Well,
be.
we got two.
Yeah, I mean,
We
well, we
each,
did one each, so
yeah,
that's enough. And I'm going to read your manifest destiny. In fact, I'd like we're going to end this show because I really like this poem, but we're going to end it just reading it, and that's how we're going to close this show today. If it's okay with you, Eric,
Oh,
and
oh yeah, I would love that. But I just want to say one thing about it. One of the people that I wrote this poem to was the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker.
okay.
He's one of the people that I was talking about in
Well,
this poem.
that fits in because and then you got and see, you also got this kinder, gentler.
Yeah.
And that was some of George Bush's daddy said. And I love that. So if you don't mind reading this, and then we're going to close with that.
Oh, I thought you were gonna read it.
No, you can read it.
Oh, okay, all right.
You can read it. And this is the end poem, ladies and gentlemen. And as soon as Eric finishes reading this, you're in for a real treat because Julie is extraordinary songwriter herself, and she puts on a hell of an educational show. It's kind of like PBS, So, and our thing is a lot different because it takes more than one monkey to run this show. Okay, Eric, take it away if you would.
This is titled Manifest Destiny. History is a whore, willing to lie down with any master, a liar and a thief of the ideas and contributions of entire civilizations. It consumes the past and spits the seeds of your memories back at you, telling you that you did not see what you saw, that no one cried or died, that everyone danced and sang like a bloodless Thanksgiving's Day feast, that my mother's mother had no words and freely spread her legs for any master, violating you while extolling the virtues of our republic's kinder, gentler transfer of powers, but only if it is from one rich white man's son to another. Neo know-nothings check birth certificates at the border, frightened and seeking an America that never existed, and all the teabags in the world won't make them real revolutionaries. Conquerors rape and pillage and call it seduction, piss on
Woo.
you and call it trickle-down economics. I have learned what is a lie, the certainty of a future without a voice or a hand to defend it, in a trail of tears and all the bloody Kansases and bloody Sundays and a scorched earth of half-hearted proclamations. I can hear that you are speaking. It's just not to me.
So good, so good. And a good old boy say, don't be pissing on my boot and telling me it's
I was thinking
raining.
of that. I was
Don't be
thinking of
pissing on my boot and telling me it's raining.
I was,
Beautiful. Well, gentlemen and ladies, we got Julie coming up right now as we speak, and once again, Eric, thank you, sir.
Oh,
And
thank you.
we're gonna get our pictures taken, and I can't tell you enough. This is such a joy with you, Eric. And ladies and gentlemen, you're in for such a treat because Julie and her songwriters, they're extraordinary. So see you next week.
Are you a poet?
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Julie, this is my friend Eric. Julie's a songwriter, and it's your turn. And Julie takes care of everything. So what?